Hi everyone and welcome to today's episode of the vlog series. One question we get asked all the time by IMG doctors is what are the different job titles? So we're going to run through them all from junior doctor right up to consultant and a few of the strange ones that you might not have heard of before as well, to hopefully give you an idea of what they all mean and where they all fit into the UK system. Alright, so the first title we're going to explain is junior doctor. Now officially in the UK, a junior doctor is any doctor below a consultant level. So it's actually a very encompassing term. The vast majority of the time though, when you're talking about in day-to-day life, you're probably thinking that it refers to what's called an SHO, a senior house officer, which again is old terminology. And the new version of this is for doctors to be called either FY1 or FY2, and then CT1 and CT2, or ST1 and ST2. So in rank order, you start with your foundation years, your FY years, and during those, that's when you've just graduated from medical school. So FY1 would be the very first year that you'd be working in a clinical setting, through to FY2, when of course you get your foundation competencies signed off. You then commence at either CT1 or CT2, ST1 and ST2, and the difference there is just the training route that you choose to go through. So for medical specialisms, for example, so in medicine, you do core training where you rotate amongst the different specialisms across medicine, whereas some of the run-through specialisms that run straight the way through from ST1 right the way through to ST6 include those like radiology, histopathology, where you don't need to do core training and rotate amongst different specialisms before getting into the long-term specialism that you intend to concentrate on. Okay, so the next set of job titles are usually encompassed by the term middle grade doctor. So this is what you might know in your home country as a registrar or a resident. And it's usually where your specialist training goes on. So in the UK, if you're an official CCT trainee, then you're going through the route known as ST3, ST4, ST5, ST6 and so on. Some of the specialisms have a year or two more, so ST7 and ST8 do exist as well. If you're not in a training post, then you might hear the terms trust grade or senior clinical fellow used as well. They're exactly the same. They just mean a middle grade doctor, a registrar doctor, an ST3 level doctor. At this stage, you are specialising in one field of chosen area. So you may be, if you've come through CT1 and CT2 as a core medicine trainee, you might then go on to specialise in cardiology, for example. Or if you've gone ST1 and ST2, of course, that run-through route continues. So you might be an ST3, 4, 5, 6 in radiology, for example. So the speciality doctor grade, this is a grade which is basically equivalent to anything ST3 plus. And in the UK, it tends to be used for those that have decided that they don't want to carry on with their training, or maybe they want to take a break from their training and rejoin it later on. So it could be for very senior registrars who have decided they don't want to sit CCT, or perhaps they've not passed it and they need to do some more work. So they opt out and then could come back in if they need to. But it's actually a very accessible route for senior doctors from overseas who wish to enter the UK but still have those years of specialised experience recognised. So it is a non-training grade when talked about in the UK, but for international doctors it can be a very appealing route. So the specialist grade, this is not to be confused with speciality doctor. A specialist is something quite different in the NHS. It's a new grade that's been brought in for those that are not quite at consultant level, perhaps they're not on the specialist register, but they are seen as more senior than a middle grade or registrar level doctor. So it could be a very good route for an international doctor who's practicing as a consultant overseas and wishes to enter the system above a middle grade but isn't quite yet on the specialist register. So a consultant is the final point on the scale for NHS doctors, and this is the point at which you will have completed all of your specialised training. So right at the very top of the ladder. The main focus for consultants in the UK is that you must be able to practice independently, and to be a substantive consultant you will need to be on the specialist register too. So general practitioners, or GPs as they're commonly known in the UK, tend to be the first point of call for most patients. So they'll go and see a GP in a local community practice, and the GP's job is to ascertain what's wrong and perhaps make a referral onto an acute hospital. They actually make up a huge part of the population of doctors in the NHS. So it's a term you might not be familiar with because the tertiary care sector, the general practice sector overseas isn't often as big. People are often seen just in acute hospital settings. But here in the UK, it's very, very different, and most patients get seen in the first instance in the community at GP practices. So a locum doctor, locum tenens is a Latin term, basically means a temporary member of staff. So if you're a locum doctor, you're working on a fixed term contract, you're not there permanently. There's two types of locum. So agency locums are those who are employed by a private agency. They're often paid an hourly rate, which tends to be quite expensive. Or you can be an NHS locum, which means you work directly for the NHS and you're employed on a direct staff contract. If you're not sure where you might fit into the UK NHS system, then do get in touch. We can definitely help point you in the right direction, or take a look at your CV to find out which would be the most equivalent role. We really appreciate you listening to today's episode of the vlog series, and if you've got any questions, we'll put our contact details up at the end of the video.